culture's expectation of me, right, is that motherhood should be natural and fulfilling and effortless. And good girl conditioning tells me, well, if motherhood is supposed to be this way and I want to be loved and worthy and belong, then I can't speak up about how it doesn't feel natural, how it doesn't always feel effortless, how it's not always fulfilling, because then I might make somebody mad. I might disappoint somebody.
Welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm Emily, a divorced mom of two on my own journey to shine a little brighter. This podcast is here to help you protect your sparkle amidst the chaos and impossible expectations of modern motherhood. If you're a mom ready to choose yourself and shine, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome to the Sparkle Project. I am always so excited for the conversations that we have here in these episodes, but today I'm like a little bit extra buzzing because I have a guest with me today who wrote a book that I have been reading. And so getting the chance to talk to her about some of what I've been reading in that book is really exciting, and to share with you some of the frameworks of how we can look at motherhood in a way that validates our own experiences and gives us the language and the understanding of what we may be experiencing to just make sense of it all a little bit more, depersonalize some of the things that feel really tricky and not so great, that really have more to do with society than they do with ourselves and our individual homes. And really, it helps us feel less alone in our experiences, because so many of us are navigating what it means to be a mother in this modern world. And it can be hard at times to figure out what that is supposed to look like for us as individuals. So I am super excited to dive into this today. Joining me is Dr. Danielle Dowling. She is a mom and a therapist-trained life coach, and she is also the author of a newly released book called Good Girl, Bad Mom, which is such an interesting title. I know when I read that title for the first time, I was like, oh, that is a concept. And there's so much about what it means to be a good girl in this book and how that turns into, or how that leads into our experience as mothers. And so we're going to get into all of that today. Danielle, welcome to the Sparkle Project. Can you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into it?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I love having these conversations. And as I was telling you a little bit earlier, I'm always just so honored and grateful, and also a little bit in awe when someone's reading my book, because it was such a personal undertaking. It started as a journaling exercise for myself. And right around what is now chapter 4, I realized, oh, maybe this is something more. Maybe how I'm feeling is how more women and mothers are feeling. And maybe what I'm expressing will help other women feel seen and valued and acknowledged. And so I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to be here and speak with you. But it's always a little bit of a pinch me moment when someone shares that they're reading my book. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, and as you shared, I'm a mom. I'm a therapist trained life coach. I'm the author of Good Girl, Bad Mom. And I have been in this work for 15 years now. I have over 12,000 hours of individual one-on-one coaching sessions with clients. So really kind of walk the talk. And my work at this point sits at the intersection of motherhood, identity, invisible labor, and I would say what happens when women slowly disappear underneath the weight of caring for everyone else. A huge part of my work is helping women understand that what they've internalized as personal failure is often completely understandable and reasonable, a reasonable response, if you will, to the impossible expectations of this enormous invisible responsibility that mothers bear. And I always, or I've gotten in the habit rather, of saying that mothers aren't broken, they're burdened. And we deserve not only emotional support beyond, hey, you're doing such a great job, but also a structural support as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so inspired by your work. I just want to start by saying that because it's so in line with the conversations that I think are crucial for us to be having,
Mhm.
especially in this moment. And so, like, for me to be talking to, I'm fangirling a little bit too. So it's exciting to have that energy here with us.
Mm.
Can you go ahead and just share with us what your motherhood journey has looked like so far?
Yes, it's certainly been, I would say, an emotional, a physical, a psychological roller coaster. In relation to the book, this is the book I was never going to write. My insides on the outside. I was going to die with all of that shame buried. So that gives you a bit of a reflection, if you will, of what my motherhood experience has been like. But so after my son was born 9 years ago, I experienced postpartum depression and anxiety and was profoundly overwhelmed in ways that I didn't expect, nor, quite frankly, was properly prepared for. And I think that I thought, well, I know that I thought, if I was more grateful, if I loved my child enough, if I was good enough at it, if I wasn't such a bad mom, then motherhood would feel much more natural and fulfilling than it actually did. But instead, I experienced, which now I understand is much more common than I once realized, I experienced a tremendous amount of identity loss. Sometimes I call it identity whiplash. I very much understand myself to be this kind of person, and then you become a mom, and now you really don't recognize yourself anymore. Yeah, priorities have shifted, emotions have shifted. There's a lot to sift and sort through your inner world, and it takes a minute to find your footing. I would say it can take years and years. Yeah. But there was overwhelm and there was rage and there was resentment on my part, and then just the constant feeling that I was failing at something, that it seemed like other women were handling better than me. I realized that other women are feeling that way as well. They're just
Mm-hmm.
not talking about it. And so I eventually realized that so many women aren't struggling because they're weak the way I thought I was, or they're not capable. They're struggling because they're carrying this enormous amount of invisible labor and work that just doesn't really have a language for it. We just don't have a language for it,
Yeah.
or support, or acknowledgement, or quite honestly, structural relief. And it's that experience that led me to write Good Girl, Bad Mom, or at least begin it when my son was about 6.5 years old. And so that was an extremely therapeutic and cathartic experience for me, and I'm grateful for it. And it's the writing of the book has helped me understand motherhood and appreciate and respect it so much more, as well as appreciate and honor and respect myself inside of it. I wouldn't start it all over again, but I do say in the book, I like myself better
Mm-hmm.
for having gone through the early motherhood experience and for the experience of motherhood. So that's what it's looked like so far. But we're only 9 years in. So to be continued. We'll
To be
talk when he's
continued.
17.
Right? There'll be
Yeah.
a whole other life lived by
Yes.
that
Yes.
point.
Epiphany. Yeah. Awakening.
As you're sharing all of that, there's just this kind of funny thing that's coming up for me. And it's not funny in like a haha way, but it's just there's this realizing how much weight it is to carry that like shame of like, I'm doing something wrong. This is really hard. I'm failing at it. And yet, how, as I'm listening to you say these things, that like, I know that load. I know like the feeling on your shoulders of like, this isn't how it was supposed to be. But I'm
Mhm.
listening to you say it and I'm like, oh, yeah, you sound kind of like you're just explaining my experience. And I know that that is, you know, through the work that I do, I know that so many moms can relate to that. And the things you're saying are so not unique to you. They're so universal in a way.
Mhm.
Obviously, it looks different for all of us, but
Mhm.
the expectations are there. And the not meeting the expectations because they're impossible to meet is also
That's
there
right.
for all of us. And so, what can feel so profoundly intense as one individual because it's like I'm failing so deeply at something that I'm supposed to be not failing at. And that is horrendously shameful and all of these things. It's like, well, it's also the experience that we're all going through. And when you recognize that, then it's no longer a personal failing. And it's a paradox, I think, in a way that is very interesting to look at and experience.
Yeah. So, yes. And I think what we are beginning to do, female kind, especially kind as a subset of
Yeah.
female kind, is, and you have to credit social media for this a lot, and online resources have been picking this up more, like the New York Times and the Atlantic and the Journal. Women are beginning to speak up and
Yeah.
share the truth of their motherhood experience. I really do believe that's where we need to begin. And that's where we begin to lift the shame
Yeah.
that silences us and how we begin to change our experience of motherhood, not just culturally, but ultimately systemically.
Yeah. I'm curious with the writing of your book. I know
Mm.
you said it started as like a journaling exercise for yourself.
Yeah.
When you decided to actually write a book and publish it for others to read that experience, what led you to make that decision and who were you writing it for?
So this is a really interesting question. And I don't know how many authors go into the writing experience knowing exactly in great detail who their audience
Yeah.
is. But in my experience, I wrote it for me. They were journaling exercises, therapeutic exercises, just a pen to paper, no filter, just trying to process my rage and my resentment and my confusion and my frustration and my guilt and my shame. And I just really needed to get it out. And I would say that I didn't clearly know who I was writing the book for
Mm-hmm.
until I was maybe done with the book,
Mm.
until I had to edit it and go back and reread it, because all I knew very clearly while I was writing it is that it was for me.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody else would relate to it, and I would be able to offer her some level of validation and acknowledgement and relief as a result of just listening to my story. But it really wasn't until much later in the process of editing the book and even putting together just a marketing for it that I realized who it was for. And so at this point, I can very definitively say that this book is for the mom that loves her kiddos fiercely, but misses herself. It's for the mom who feels overwhelmed, but guilty for feeling overwhelmed. Very much how I felt. It's for the mom who looks around and thinks, why does this feel harder for me than it seems for everyone else? I definitely thought that. It is written for, after retrospect, women who are functioning and who are capable and who are loving and who are high achieving and also quietly drowning. And I recognize myself in that too. I just didn't have the words for it.
Yeah.
Wasn't able to articulate that. And now I'm in a better position to articulate that. It's very much memoir and part framework
Yeah.
and part permission slip for women to start telling the truth
Yeah.
about how much they're carrying in motherhood, and also the opportunity to reclaim themselves inside of it, especially reclaim a greater sense of their worth, their sense of how much I matter
Yeah.
inside the experience of motherhood. When I do book signings, I will write, "You matter." That's my message, right? Dear Angela, dear Becca, dear, you matter, love Danielle.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the primary takeaway messages. You matter inside of this, because we very much, mothers can self-abandon hand over fist. So that is who I learned I ended up writing the book for.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because I think in a way that is the you wrote the book for, right? It's like that's
Yeah.
what's kind of cool about it is it's like you process it and it is in like unpacking the stories. And I think the way that it is a memoir and also it's more than that though. It's also this framework. It's also this way of understanding the experience It's like that is the processing that needs to happen, that we all need to do to understand our experiences in the context.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of that framework. Your book centers on this concept that you call the motherhood setup. What is this setup that you argue we all need to be aware of? And what are the impacts to the individual mothers of this setup?
Sure. And thank you for the question. Similar to how I did not know exactly who I was writing the book for,
Yeah.
the framework that I call the motherhood setup really didn't arrive to me until after I had finished the book. When I was able to take sort of that 30,000-foot view through the editing process and feel into the primary themes of the book. And this is sort of what arrived for me. So, the motherhood setup is a framework that I created that explains why modern motherhood is so overwhelming and why women are taught to believe that the overwhelm is their fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crucial. So, what we call anxiety and overwhelm in motherhood, I see as the collision of three particular forces. Those forces being what I call the motherhood fantasy, and we can kind of dig into the details of that, good girl conditioning, and invisible labor. So, three forces. And when those three forces collide, when they inevitably collide, a woman does what she's been trained to do, and she assumes that if she's overwhelmed or anxious or has any kind of sticky feelings, that she is the problem. So she internalizes that upset as a personal failing. And not because she's irrational, but because she's been taught to measure her worth by how well she quietly holds it all together. While culture largely ignores the cost because it's built on the assumption that a woman will endure because we have and because we do. If you look at even pandemic era in 2020, when women had to, mothers filled that gap, right? There's not school any longer. We're doing homeschool. There's not extracurricular activities. It all fell on the shoulders of the primary caregiver, which is primarily the woman. And society was kind of like, culture was like, you're doing such a great job. Keep going. And mothers are like, but I'm not doing a great job. I'm kind of drowning.
Yeah.
Help. And we're saying this, and then society's like, oh, you're doing such a great job, just keep going. And moms are like, but I'm not doing a great job, I'm drowning, help. And we're just sort of met with that, you keep going, you're so good at it. So that's what I mean by culture largely ignores the cost, right? It again just built on the assumption that women will just take it under the chin, if you will,
Yeah.
because we have.
Yeah.
And so that is the motherhood setup, the explanation for why modern motherhood is so overwhelming, and the very critical component of why women believe that overwhelm is their fault.
What really strikes me about it is how, like, I don't want to say inevitable, because as we are going to get into, like, there's ways to break free from it somewhat, right? But it is a setup. It is like
Mhm.
we are trained, as you said, and we are brought up into a world that treats it a certain way. And that can be really a weird thought to have, of like, oh, this is so much bigger than me. How am I supposed to fight against that? But it also, I think, does depersonalize it in a really powerful way of like, this isn't your fault that you're struggling in this way and that you're overwhelmed in this way.
That's right. I hope when women learn about the motherhood setup, my greatest hope and prayer and intention, quite honestly, at this point, is that she will feel an initial sense of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and let's talk about it, when you learn exactly why and how it's a setup, there's this relief around, oh, my overwhelm is not a personal failing. It's
Yeah.
not a character flaw. My overstimulation is not a character flaw. It's not a deficit in me. My frustration, my confusion. It's not, again, a character flaw or a deficit. I'm not broken. I'm actually just overloaded. Yeah, because modern mothers are doing, I'm convinced, are doing a job that they were never meant to carry alone. And I'm in the habit of saying, listen, when we used to roam the earth in tribes, of 47, 37 people, motherhood was a tribe. It truly was a village. And now in modern motherhood and society, at least in the United States and modernized country, we're living in these homes on these individual little islands, and women are drowning. And I know we're going to discuss this, but thank you for the opportunity to explain those three different forces, because I think it gives a lot of context to her. And it really is the why and the how behind, listen, it's not you, right? It's the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. Let's
Yeah.
get into these three
The three
pieces.
forces.
Let's start with the motherhood fantasy.
Okay. The motherhood fantasy is the story that we are sold that if we are doing motherhood right,
Yeah.
and everybody wants to do it right. Everybody wants to do anything that they endeavor around right. Yeah, it's just natural human instincts. So if we're the story that we're sold that if we're doing motherhood right, it will feel natural, it will feel effortless, and it will feel fulfilling at all times. So that, and here's the rub, so that when it inevitably feels hard or overwhelming or overstimulating or suffocating or monotonous, or yes, a woman doesn't question the fantasy, she questions herself, and she assumes something is wrong with her. And this is why so many women think, maybe I'm bad at this, i.e., bad mom. Maybe I'm not grateful enough. Maybe I'm not patient enough. Maybe I'm not organized enough, right? The fault is within me. There's something I need to
Mhm.
fix about me. Maybe something's wrong with me, ultimately. But often, nothing's wrong with them. They're just reacting normally, might I add, to a chronic overload. Again,
Yeah.
a job, a role that was never meant to be carried alone. So that's one of the primary forces. Like, I'm supposed to be good at this. Well, why are you supposed to be good at it? Just because you're a woman? But that's the story. That's the assumption that we have, but we have that because it is culturally enforced and has
Yeah.
been for eons, one might add. And there's very little flexibility inside that. So that's the motherhood fantasy. So we have that. Then we have the second force, which I like to call good girl conditioning. I am a recovering good girl. And I did
Same.
not even realize that I was a good girl and then aspired to be a recovering one until I was writing the book, and I'm, oh my god, this is me. So what is good girl conditioning? It's the training that so many girls who become women get, spoken or unspoken, that it is our job to be agreeable and impressive and low maintenance, just easy at all times, as a means of earning love, safety, and belonging. So that if I'm impressive, if I'm agreeable, if I'm not disappointing anyone, if I'm pleasant, productive, pleasing, then I will be worthy of love. I will be worthy of belonging. And therefore, I will be worthy of safety. So many women, as a result, learn early on, don't need too much, don't upset people, don't disappoint people, be good, be accommodating. But then motherhood arrives, and motherhood is sort of what I call the Super Bowl of good girl conditioning, because that conditioning goes into overdrive. And a lot of moms become what I jokingly call a good girl with a diaper bag, right? Always pleasing, always productive, and selfless to the point of self erasure. They abandon themselves to keep the peace, and we call it being a good mom, being a good partner, being a good woman. And it is not terribly conscious. So the good girl conditioning is at work, arguably, in the majority of the women walking the planet at this time. And we're not even really aware of it, because there is some dialogue around it, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of dialogue around it. So now you've got the motherhood fantasy. My expectation, culture's expectation of me, right, is that motherhood should be natural and fulfilling and effortless. And good girl conditioning tells me, well, if motherhood is supposed to be this way and I want to be loved and worthy and belong, then I can't speak up about how it doesn't feel natural, how it doesn't always feel effortless, how it's not always fulfilling, because then I might make somebody mad. I might disappoint somebody. I might be extradited by the tribe, right? And then I won't be safe. And then I won't belong. And then I won't be worthy. And I won't be worth keeping around. Do you see how that psychology just runs so deep? And so we don't say anything. And so many moms think that another mom is doing it better than her, but she's probably not and probably feels similar, but that mom isn't speaking up about it, so I don't know. And I think maybe I'm the only one that's really having a hard time about it. And if I'm the only one that's really having a hard time about it, then maybe the problem is with me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to fix me, right? And when a woman, this is not so true of men, but when a woman thinks it's her fault, sees herself as a problem, she doesn't ask for change. She doesn't call for change. She just tries to fix herself. Yeah. And that's why we don't have a lot of systemic change. There are great and worthwhile conversations happening around this, but it's not framework, right?
Yeah.
It's not, you don't see it show up in policy or really in the corporate workplace in a big way, or even in our more universal conversations about modern womanhood. So those are the first two forces. And then there's a third one called invisible labor. Do you want to hear about that? Any questions about
Yes.
the first two?
Well, I think you've laid it out so clearly how the good girl conditioning ties into the upholding of this fantasy.
The motherhood
It is a
fantasy. Yeah.
fantasy. It's
Mhm.
not real. We can't achieve it, but it's the goal. And so if you are trained to do things to the goal, to the standard, you're supposed to do that. It's like, of course. So, yeah. And then I think it's important now to talk about why we can't achieve that. And I think that's kind of what you're going to get into here.
Yeah, so the expectations are unreasonable. The bar is just set way too high for one woman. And then we have invisible labor. So invisible labor, and it's getting so much more airtime, which I'm so grateful for. But invisible labor is everything a mother does, a woman does that people don't see.
Mm-hmm.
So the anticipating, the planning, the executing, and then the follow up to keep family life running. And I say that because it's not just the doing of the tasks,
Yeah.
it's being the default owner of the entire family system. It's all the mental tabs that are open in a mother's brain that is so immensely draining for her. What makes invisible labor especially exhausting is that it is massive and it is relentless. There's no end, but it's also unnamed and unpaid, which makes it easier to dismiss. And so I am unconsciously also dismissing her, the woman who does the work, her effort, her value, her worth, her output. It makes it easier to dismiss, to minimize. Oh, you're just going to Target. Or you're just booking soccer camp. How hard can that be? To minimize is like sort of doing nothing. And to privatize, right? So that's part of the shame. Right? I privatize it. It's not that important because the world doesn't really reflect back
Mm-hmm.
the enormity of the role. And so mothers can really begin themselves and do to question the value of what they know is enormous, but also essential. So it's invisible. And then let's be honest, the work stays invisible because that's how the system stays comfortable. If we were to collectively name the workload of motherhood, we would then be responsible to collectively respond to that at home and at work and in policy. And that's my greatest hope, dream, and intention. But that is the conundrum. And so this is the motherhood setup. And she really can't win. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping that as we talk about it, that that's the first step of escaping it, of really creating more relief. So
Yeah.
there's at least the awareness, the realization, the reframe that, oh, maybe it's not me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the system. Maybe I'm just overloaded. And we can stop personalizing the shame and the overwhelm and the guilt.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking about with invisible labor and naming it. And we do hear these conversations a little bit more. I
Also,
mean, we're finally talking about it, right? Which
yeah,
is something. But how, yes, it's invisible to the world and we don't acknowledge it on a societal level. But I think there's also, and you kind of alluded to this, there's also the opportunity for feeling like I'm not even doing anything, I'm not even contributing anything because it almost is invisible to us. It's like
that's
this
right.
isn't valued. And so I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, and I'm just a stay at home mom, or
Yeah,
I'm just
just yeah.
navigating, like I'm not even doing anything. And it's like it's a lie. And if we actually look at the things, if we actually look at I mean, I'm one of those people who, when something is stressing me out, I tend to not deal with it right away. And it's
Mm,
something I'm really working on because it is something that affects my life deeply. Because it is always in the back of my mind causing me stress.
mhm,
And it's way worse than if I just dealt with it because now I'm going to have to deal with it eventually. And it takes a month of my life just like spiking my cortisol in the background, right? Like, I think like acknowledging how invisible it is so important. And then how it kind of ties into the rest of this. How would you explain this setup kind of working in real life where these three pieces are tying into each other?
Sure. So, yeah, a couple of things, and I want to respond to what you said too, because maybe it'll bring a sense of relief for the listener as
Yeah.
well, because I know it did for me when I saw it more clearly. So, just as far as like what does it look like in real life? It looks like a mom coordinating pediatrician appointments while answering work emails, remembering Spirit Day, ordering birthday gifts, emotionally regulating a child's meltdown, trying not to disappoint her partner, keeping the refrigerator full. Is there gas in the car? Did I put an ice pack in my child's lunchbox because it's actually be warm today, not cold today? Right. And wondering why she feels like she's losing herself. And then instead of saying, wow, I'm overloaded and this is unsustainable, she asks, why can't I handle this better? Why am I not enough for it? Why am I failing? And that's the setup. So that's what it looks like kind of on a daily basis. One of the inspirations for the Motherload Wage Act, which is my petition to Congress to pay caregivers, the primary caregiver, a wage, and I know we'll dig into that a little while. The inspiration for it came from me as a mom living through the day that I just explained and beginning to ask myself and realize that someone in the corporate workplace is getting paid to do what I'm doing right
Yeah.
now. I drive a half an hour to my son's school and a half an hour home. That's 1 hour. So I drive almost 2 hours a day for just school pickup and drop off. And I love him. He's in a good place. I'm happy to do it. But one day it dawned on me that there's an Uber driver that gets paid money to do this,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a private driver that gets paid money to do this, or there's a bus driver that gets paid money to do this, but I do it out of the love in my heart. When I am booking doctor's appointments, because quite frankly, I book them for my husband a lot too, those doctor appointments are not always, direct, meaning what I think is going to be a 3-minute activity turns into a 13-minute activity. It turns into maybe 2 phone calls or 3 phone calls because things happen on the calendar where you're like, well, actually, I don't know if I can do that. Let me go call this other person to see if that thing is happening. Because if that thing is not happening, then I can be there at 9:45. But if that other thing is happening, I can't be there at 9:45, and we have to pick a different Thursday. Oh, the doctor's not in on Thursdays anymore. Okay, let's now look at Tuesdays. Well, shit, I don't have a Tuesday available for the next 4 weeks, but my son needs glasses. What am I going to do? So it's a lot of mental jujitsu as
Yeah.
well. And then I think to myself, wow, there's an admin somewhere getting paid $70,000 a year to do this crisis management, right? Someone's getting paid to do that. All the high level executive decision making, the thousands of little decisions that live in my head all day, somebody's getting a salary. Somebody's getting paid to do that. And so, long story long, that reframing what I do, every little thing I do on a daily basis to contribute to the well being and the flow of my family life, when I reframed it from the point of view of what would this job be in the corporate workplace and what would they be getting paid, it helped me more clearly see at least the economic value behind
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing, and therefore help to reinforce the real world value of what I was doing. And in fact, I learned I was not doing nothing. I was, and most moms do, an entire corporate organization chart daily. I did
Yeah.
a post on Instagram where I said, if moms were paid, and I list out, I do HR. Someone in HR gets paid $140,000. These are median incomes based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I didn't pull these numbers out of nowhere, right? This is what, right, the average HR executive gets paid, what the average logistics executive get paid, admin, operations, project management. And I did each of those salaries. And it might be a little bit of a stretch, but it added up to 640 something thousand
Yeah.
dollars a year. So in the corporate workplace, what mothers do daily is given a title, is given a salary, and sometimes is given a team.
Mm-hmm.
And at home, we call it help or just being a mom. So I think it's important to, and I'll have this conversation in different niches, especially when we're talking about how motherhood is leadership.
Yeah.
Because when we're looking at it from that point of view with that kind of criteria, it's very easy to see the economic value of the caregiving we do beyond just the emotional value, because society has no problem patting us on the back or the tush and just saying, good job, girl. We love go mom, right? Like you're the
Yep.
priceless linchpin of society. I hope you feel really
Mm-hmm.
proud of yourself. Right. But I come from the standpoint of like love doesn't pay the bills, hence the Motherload Wage Act. But I hope that was helpful just to you and also to the listener to think about,
Yeah.
oh, when I'm driving, how much does an Uber driver get paid to do this?
Yeah.
How much does DoorDash get paid to deliver food to my front door? How much does Target get paid to pull my food from the shelves and then deliver it to my front door? Like all of this costs money. How much does a tutor get paid to do homework with a child?
Yeah.
Because that's me. I'm also the tutor. On and on. How much do nannies get paid? Full-time nannies, live-in nannies. How much do they get paid to change diapers, empty diaper trash cans, right? Prepare food, wash the bibs and the onesies that have got pooped on and throw it up. Like and recognizing it as economic infrastructure and what we do as financially valuable does not mean we don't love our children.
Yeah.
Chapter 10 in Good Girl Bad Mom is titled very much on purpose. Motherhood is a joy, but it's also a job.
Yeah.
And we have no problem talking about the joy. And I think we should keep talking about the joy aspects, but I think we need to turn up the volume on how it's a job
Yeah.
as well and really honor that and know that it doesn't take away. It does not mitigate how much we love our children. I think it actually reinforces it. We love our children. This look what we're willing to handle, to endure,
Yeah.
right? And from my point of view, and now I would like to be paid for it
Yeah.
in some regard.
No, I mean, I think just in my mind, the conversation of how we can, as a society and as individuals and like within the home, value the caregiving work and the labor of
Right.
motherhood. Because
Right.
really, like everything you're talking about here, it's like, yes, people can make the argument of like, well, dads do that too, blah, blah, blah. But like, that's not the expectation. The expectation is that even if dad is handling something, it's really your responsibility. Like, you're the mom. He might be helping, right? In quotes, helping, or like, oh, great, he's an equal partner in this. But the idea that society has of mothers is that this is your job and maybe someone else is doing it for you. Maybe you have a nanny, maybe you have these things, but it's your responsibility. And then many of us are also working full time on top of this and all of these things. And the labor we're doing in this life at home that is just expected is not compensated for. It's not valued. We don't talk about it like it has any value. I'm curious, the thing that comes to my mind, because I know that when people hear this conversation, that this is kind of society's then next question is like, well, you chose it. Like, you chose this, though. You chose to be a mom. You didn't have to be a mom. And I'm wondering what you would say to that response to this policy change.
So I chose to be a mom. So that means that caregiving, we should not recognize caregiving as economic infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So
Yeah.
caregiving accounts for 1.5, this is unpaid. If we were to pay it, caregiving accounts for 1.1 to 1.5 trillion dollars a year. That is
Yeah.
unrecognized by the GDP. Now, about 600 billion of that, like 600 and a half ish billion of that is unpaid housework and parenting by the primary caregiver, the default parent, who 90% of the time is the woman. There's all
Mm-hmm.
stats to back
Yeah.
this up. And then the rest is caregiving, people caring for elders or sick. Okay. So, my argument is that me choosing to be a mother does not erase or mitigate the economic value of the labor that I'm doing, nor does it excuse the fact that society has not properly and appropriately acknowledged the value of that work. Because society and culture has historically, traditionally not chosen to articulate and value the labor of that work as part of what explains my blindsidedness when I became a mother and this work was sort of the reality of the job became clear.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if culture and society was more transparent about the realities of the job of motherhood, maybe I, as a woman, or even as a man, as a partnership, a couple, considering having a child, if I was clear on what that responsibility really looked like, not the fantasy,
Yeah.
not what I'm promised, but what it really looks like, maybe I wouldn't have a child.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have the chance because when somebody asks me that question, what I infer from that is, well, that implies that I knew how
Yeah.
much work it would be.
Yeah.
That implies that I was made clear, I was informed about motherhood from A to Z, not just how do I change a diaper, what foods are the best foods for the baby once they're born, right? How to swaddle them properly. Like, because motherhood is so much more than
Yeah.
baby bottles and breast pumps and the right onesie and stroller. But that is what we insist on educating her with.
Yeah.
That is the primary education. Informed motherhood nowadays is primarily what's the right stroller, what's the right diaper, what's the right baby bottle, what's the right onesie, what's the right? And in chapter 10 of my book, and I encourage the listener to go to, I gave motherhood a job description. It's broken down into 6 different time periods, newborn through 25 years old. It is literally a job description.
Yeah.
Newborn, 0 to 1, second stage, 1 to 5, because I think motherhood changes drastically every 5 years or
Yeah.
changes enough that you've now just gotten promoted. It's a new job, learning curve, right? 5 to 10, you just got promoted, mom, learning curve. 10 to 15, you just got promoted again. Congratulations, mom. Learning curve. Learn how to be the mom of an 11-year-old. Learn how to be the mom of a 16-year-old. Learn how to be the mom of a 21-year-old. And so that is a bit of my long-winded answer for that question. I would take that question much more seriously if culturally we were much more transparent about
Yeah.
what the role of motherhood actually looked like. Then I
Yeah.
would say, okay, you told me, I knew it was going to cost this much. It was going to require 5 to 8 hours of unpaid caregiving and household work a day. If I really knew all of that, then maybe I wouldn't have had a child. Now, I don't regret having my son, and I want to go on record to say that because I love him tremendously. And my advocacy is around joy and job.
Yeah.
Yes, let's acknowledge that it's a joy. We should. There's so much. I say, I'm a better person. I like me better because of my experience of motherhood.
Yeah.
But it is not easy. It is not the fantasy. It is not always, does not always feel natural. It is not always fulfilling. And it's not effortless. It requires a tremendous amount of work that is, again, culturally unnamed, unpaid, under acknowledged, under supported, under treated, underfunded, under researched, if we want to get into women's health studies. So
Yeah.
that's what I have to say about that. I could say more, but I think
I
that
know,
sums it
I
up.
know, I know. We could do a whole other
Yeah,
episode. You could write a
on
whole
that.
nother book on it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
no, I think I just want to like kind of pull something out of there that stands out to me is how unfair it is that this is the world, and not just the world that we are given to raise our children in, but the systems with which we're given to raise our children within. It's this patriarchal system, it's this capitalistic system, it's this way of existing that we can't just not be a part of. It's the reality is that we have to pay our bills. We have to send our kids to school. There's expectations that, like, yeah, we can step back and decide what's important to us. Like, there's obviously, we don't have to feed into the systems in exactly the way that it's kind of sold to us. We have to participate in this way. There's ways that we can not do it to that level or whatever it is, right? But I think, like, what I like about everything you just said is it's like, the point isn't that I don't want to have children. The point is that I want to change the way that we handle the role and the responsibility. And if this is all going to fall on mom, because again, it's like it can be two parents, it can be a community, you can have grandparents helping with your kids, all this stuff, but the responsibility still is expected to fall on mom. And if that's the way it's going to be, then okay, it needs to be compensated. And whatever that looks like, it's like this work needs to be valued. It needs to be given an actual value that means something to society. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate like the fire within you that comes out when talking about it, because I think these conversations, like we have to be having these conversations.
Yeah.
And I think they're hard to have sometimes because it's like, it is so countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, and it is quite a polarizing topic, but
Yeah.
it's a polarizing topic because of the motherhood setup.
Yeah.
Because some people
Yeah.
are just so up to their neck in the motherhood fantasy and good girl conditioning that it's so deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I talk about this in the book too. I think it's primarily because we conflate loving our child with loving the job when really they're
Yeah.
just two separate truths. I can love my child and not love the job all
Yeah.
the time. And we just as a society, we haven't gotten to the point
Yeah.
where we've really recognized that these are separate entities, they're separate discussions, they're separate buckets, if you will. And that's really a conversation that I'm hoping to open up and give women much more permission around acknowledging and also expressing. And I certainly felt that way. I cannot talk about how much I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah.
I cannot talk about how I don't feel like a natural. I cannot talk. I have deep shame about how this does not feel easy or effortless for me because it's going to mean that I don't somehow love my son.
Yeah.
When what I learned through the book is that couldn't be further from the truth. I
Yeah.
can love my son deeply, which I do, and adore him, and just not like the job. It's a very particular job, and it's an invisible experience, which is why I gave it a job description.
Yeah, I love
In
that.
chapter 10, go read the job description. You can see, like, this is a tremendous amount of responsibility. I wanted to take it out of my head, out of her head, and put it on paper and make it visible so you can make it tangible. So you could say, oh my goodness, this is a real job.
Yes.
This is a real resume.
This matters. This
matter. And you matter.
Yeah.
You matter inside of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ugh. Okay. I'm like, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
Good stuff.
I want to ask you, as we wrap up, something I always like to ask guests is about the sparkle, this like innate energy and light that makes us who we are, that's within us. It can often be buried in the roles and responsibilities, this invisible labor, all of this stuff that we've talked about. How do you protect your sparkle within it?
It's such a good question. I think the answer to this question gets to evolve, right, depending on where you are in life and the experiences that you had. And I think I've arrived at a place. This is how I protect my sparkle, particularly in this context, which is remembering that I am a whole human being, not just a role.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were just saying, that I matter inside this motherhood experience. I'm not here to be a constant people pleaser or perform perfection for everyone. And I tell my son, I'm participating in this. I tell him I matter. When I've responded to 9 requests of his, and I'm starving and I can't do anything else until I eat, I will say, I need to eat. And he'll say, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, I matter. I matter. Mommy's hungry. How do you feel when you're hungry? And he will think about it. He takes it in because he's open. He's a sponge. I'm like, I matter too. We'll play songs on the way to school. And I make him share with me. You get a song, I get a song. You get a song, I get a song. Because I matter, and I don't want to listen to Pikachu the whole way to school. Like, I want to blow my brains out. So it's like, I really try to say, I need a nap.
Yeah.
I need 10 minutes out because I matter. So you're going to have to self-entertain. And hopefully I'm role modeling true self-care for him too. So I would say that that's how I protect my sparkle at the moment, is really remembering how much I matter inside the experience of motherhood, and also being a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank
beautiful answer. Beautiful. I think something we can all take with us is that mindset. Where can listeners find you? Where can they find your book?
Yes. Thank you so much. So my book is on Amazon. Easy to find. Good Girl, Bad Mom. You don't even need to remember my name. Just remember the title. Good Girl, Bad Mom. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably the best social handle to find me at. And it is simply I am Danielle Dowling. And then there's my website, Danielle Dowling. But you can find that from Instagram. It'll take you there. So that's probably the best place.
And I'll put it all in the show notes. So it's very easy
thank
to
you.
find.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Like, what a life-giving conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Amazing.
I'm just always so thrilled to be having these conversations. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's just beautiful to see where my first very teary-eyed, like tissues all around this desk, like journal entry has gone. And I'm proud of the work. And I haven't always said I'm proud of myself because of those perfectionistic good girl tendencies, but I've gotten much more in the habit since writing the book and publishing it of just saying, I'm proud of you, Danielle. And getting to talk about it this way reinforces that. So thank you for being a part of that with me. It's priceless. It's very meaningful.
It's beautiful. And thank you so much for being here and giving your time to us as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in. Keep on shining. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sparkle Project. Loved what you heard? Share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to leave a rating and review to show your support for the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.